This video will give you an overview of Kontour's very flexible and musical filters. We'll start with the state variable filter, which is a multi-mode filter, meaning you can use it as a low-pass, bandpass, or high-pass filter. We need to give the filter something to bite into, so we'll grab a little bit of self-modulation here. Let's listen to oscillator B while we're at it. Do the same thing here, and drop this down an octave, maybe detune them a little bit. And now we can hear what's going on with the state variable filter if we turn off the input to the mixers from the two oscillators here, and we'll shoot up the state variable filter input. And now we can hear a very typical low-pass filter. But as I mentioned, it's a multi-mode filter, so if we turn this up to bandpass, we can hear typical bandpass filter effect, and of course a high-pass filter. The state variable filter actually consists of two filters, two two-pole filters built together. So when they're in series, which is the default setting right here, that means that we're getting a four-pole filter. To illustrate that, I'll bring the spread of the two resonances of the two filters down to nothing. So there's no difference between the two resonances. You can already hear a fairly steep cutoff right here. But if I put them together, there's a smoother characteristic. We've already seen that many parameters in Kontour have both a positive value and a negative value. In other words, a phase inversed value. And that's the same with the state variable filter. So with the two filters in parallel here we have them both positively parallel. So their signals are going to add together. Now, if we take this, now it's in series, and now phase inversed. And so they're completely canceling each other out, but we can turn up the spread of the resonances. So we're changing the actual shape of the filters compared to each other. And that gives us another effect, another kind of filter. So by using just a few parameters with the state variable filter, we can get a lot of different sound qualities. Let's look at two other aspects of the state variable filter that give it flexibility and character. First of all, we are routing both oscillator A and B into the state variable filter. So we hear a combination of both. But if we take this down here while we're playing, you can hear just oscillator B, and now just oscillator A. Furthermore, something we're going to see a little bit later, we can fade in the comb filter as well. Right now there's no comb filter, but here we can have all of the comb filter, and here all of the comb filter phase inversed. So let's put this back to default and take all of A coming in. So this way we can really divide the signals quite nicely. A very unusual but powerful feature is the FM modulation on the cutoff. To explain this, I'll go back to oscillator B and I'll put the self-modulation to 0. So we're just hearing we're just getting a sine wave coming out. And all we will hear here is oscillator A. And now if I put this down to B, this is the frequency modulation of the filter cutoff, and the frequency modulation source here in this case will be oscillator B. So I'm going to take this way down so we can really hear the frequency being very low. It's basically an LFO on the cutoff. And now as we get higher, we get a really nice sound here. So there are certain ratios that sound really good. I'll take this up to, let's see, 91 to 60 is very nice. Now let me turn down the cutoff a little bit. And I'll add a little bit of drive. We'll talk about this in the effects video. The comb filter is one of the most important aspects of both the structure and the character of Kontour. Comb filters get their name from what they look like when you put them into a spectrum analyzer. The frequency response has a lot of dips and peaks in it, making it look sort of like a comb. And they're used in flangers and chorus and other delay-based effects. Usually they are tuned in terms of frequency, but in Kontour we use notes to tune the comb filter. Comb filters can also be used to create physical modeling sounds, as we're going to hear in just a minute. You'll find in many of the presets of Kontour that the comb filter plays a very important role. Let's take, for example, the preset Pizzy in the plucked bank. The comb filter makes these kind of physical modeling sounds possible. Let's look at the block diagram of the comb filter. The audio signal comes into the delay, then the two-pole all-pass filter, then the one-pole low-pass filter, and to the output. But like most delays, there's a feedback circuit here and coming back, and that creates the repetition of the delays. The delay time is actually a pitch control in Kontour. So because the delay is usually very, very short in a comb filter, the delay times, we can think of it in terms of frequency, or even better, on a musical basis, to think of it in terms of pitch. And this is really what makes Kontour very musical. So you can see in the tuning control, we have our note pitch and the pitch bend, the various MIDI inputs from our MIDI keyboard coming in to really control the comb filter. In addition, the feedback itself is controlled by note on and off, and then we have the other parameters on our interface, decay and key tracking and gate. So we're back to our default preset here, which just gives us a sine wave, but we'll add some harmonic content with self-modulation. We'll cut the envelope way down, just to have a little bit of an impulse for the comb filter. And now I'll cut down the input to the mixer to nothing from oscillator A, but I'll turn up the comb filter here. You might hear that I'm also listening to oscillator B in here, and that's because our crossfader here is in between the two, but we'll put it 100% to A, so we're just hearing that little click there. And now I'll turn up the decay here. This is basically the feedback of the delay line, and turn this way down. So now you can hear, really, it's just your basic delay line. But as I bring this up, it starts becoming pitched at some point. And all the way back up to 60. I can cut off some of this high frequency content. So I get almost a nylon string pluck sound here, very quickly and easily this way. It's ringing a little bit, so I'll put the gate up. And this gate kicks in right when I release my note. So if I hold my note, you can hear the tone still playing a little bit from the delay line here. But the gate kicks in right when I release my note. If I play a short staccato note. So I can get plucked notes very easily this way. This is an excellent method of kind of a physical modeling method to deal with creating some interesting plucked sounds, some interesting string sounds. Another thing we can do with the comb filter is to feed it some noise. To do that, I'm going to take from our default preset our oscillator A and basically crank it all the way up with a shaper, a lot of drive, put that into the mix, and shoot that up to no key tracking. So I get basically a snare type sound. I'm modulating itself so strongly that it's creating a lot of frequencies all over the place. Sounds pretty much like noise. And I'm going to put that all into the comb filter here, drop this down, and there we have a kind of almost a blown sound here. And if I put my attack time or lower my attack time, I'll put the decay up, our feedback up a little bit more. And this gives us an interesting sound right away. I can, of course, combine this with oscillator B, and I'll do what I just did before with a very short sound here, a very kind of a pluck sound here, and we don't hear that because it's not going in yet, but and maybe a little bit too much, and put that up, have some self-modulation going here too. So we can combine the two. And plus, let's look at this all-pass filter. The all-pass filter, when it's all the way up like that, it's not affecting the signal at all. But when we bring the tune down, basically we're detuning the higher partials, or the higher harmonics here, the upper part of the spectrum as we go down. We can really get some kind of string sounds. And I'll shoot this down a little bit more so we don't have so much here. Just a little bit of noise there. You can see how you can really sculpt the sound with the comb filter using both oscillators here going in and just playing with the proportions of the signals from both oscillators. Finally, let's have a look at the routing and let's take the comb filter out of the mix here. And we'll shoot in the state variable filter. Now we're getting into the state variable filter, we're getting both A and B. So we're not hearing any of the comb filter. But if we push this all the way up, we're hearing the same sound we heard before, except it's filtered. And so the routing gives us more flexibility here. So that concludes our video on the two filters in Kontour. In the next video, we're going to look at the modulation possibilities.